My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Once I came across a post on Reddit, which is one of the social networks out there in cyberspace, in which the user posted the following, and I quote, "I made a huge, terrifying, life-changing leap of faith today in order to follow God's will for my life. Unfortunately, I don't know what that calling is yet. I am desperately trying to have faith that God will reveal my next step when the time is right. In the meantime, could you point me towards some saints who gave up their own plans in order to submit to the will of God? I need all the intercession I can get at this point. Thanks, friends." To which one of the users on Reddit responded and said, "Saint Francis, Saint Ignatius, Saint Joseph, Saint all the apostles. And finally, I know where you may want to go. Adoration. That's as close as we can privately get to heaven. And there you can say, 'Here I am, Lord. Speak, your servant is listening.'" End of quote. Jesus, I thought of this conversation as I speak with you today, trying to enter into the scene of this gospel. That is, the gospel as recorded by Mark in chapter 12. And the setting is clear. You are in the temple. And there you are teaching your apostles. You are really forming them. And I listen in, and what do I hear? I hear you saying these words, "Beware of the scribes who like to go around in long robes and accept greetings in the marketplaces, seats of honor in synagogues, and place of honor in banquets. They devour the houses of widows and, as a pretext, recite lengthy prayers. They will receive a very severe condemnation." And I'm thinking to myself, wow, a severe condemnation. And here, Jesus, I notice that you specifically refer to the widows. And I'm also thinking to myself, who was a widow to you? And I think the answer is there in Scripture. It is rather obvious what we see in the dictionary as a definition of a widow. A widow is simply a woman whose husband has died. But sacred Scripture goes on to explain further. And I came across a description as provided in the Catholic Bible Dictionary, edited by Scott Hahn, where we note from Scripture that the woman who had lost her husband was permitted to remarry and was subject to legal protection and special concern by society, and especially by God, and that the maltreatment of widows provoked divine wrath. It wasn't easy for a widow. In fact, it was pretty tough. According to the Old Testament law, a childless widow was given the option of marrying the brother of her deceased husband, in order that the name of the deceased man might not end. And this was a so-called levirate law. If the brother chose not to marry her, she returned to her paternal home. Going back to the Gospel of Jesus, we read more about you. We hear that he sat down, that is you, Jesus, opposite the treasury and observed how the crowd put money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow also came and put in 2 small coins worth a few cents. At this point, Jesus, you call your disciples and you tell them, "Amen, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury. For they have all contributed from their surplus wealth, but she, from her poverty, has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood." The generosity of this woman, of this widow, stands out, given what we know about the widows, as we mentioned earlier. This was very generous of this widow to give all she had to live on. In fact, one of the things that we learn about the widows in the Torah, that is especially in the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, we find out that The Torah commanded that a farmer not reap his field to the absolute furthest extent up to the corners. That way, the poor, widows, orphans, and foreigners could glean the fields for food, and an example of that is Ruth in the Old Testament, who gleaned the fields of Boaz to provide for her mother-in-law, Naomi. Jesus, at times I find it hard to give myself to you, to give my time to you, and also to give myself to the others in honor of you, in honor of your name, to see your image in the others. And that is because at times I am selfish. Help me be generous like this widow. Help me be generous like the saints I thought of at the beginning of this meditation, and especially the saints, all the apostles. This week we celebrated the feast of the martyrs of Uganda, another example of a total self-giving. The feast day of the martyrs of Uganda is on the 3rd of June. And on this day, Uganda actually comes to a standstill. About 1 million pilgrims gather around the martyrs' shrine in Namugongo, in the outskirts of Kampala, the capital of Uganda. The Ugandan martyrs were a group of boys and men who were canonized by a new saint, St. Paul VI, in 1964. They were killed on orders of King Mwanga II. The word king in Luganda is Kabaka, and in this case, Kabaka Mwanga II ordered the killings of these martyrs. Most of the martyrs were boys and young adults working in the court of Kabaka Mwanga II under the leadership of St. Charles Lwanga. They ended up being burnt alive after refusing the sexual perversion of Kabaka Mwanga II. In other words, they gave everything, including their own lives. Some of them were still receiving the Christian instruction. They were still being formed in the faith. What about me? How do I set aside time for you during my day? Time for Mass, time for prayer, time for some scriptural reading, time for some spiritual reading, time for the Rosary, time for the Angelus, time to examine my conscience. How do I set time aside for study, for work, for rest, for sports, for friends? And how do I orient my whole day to you? I think about this, Lord, and many times I am embarrassed because I don't give everything. At times I give you what's left over. I don't fight to live out my plan of life. At times I'm lazy. At times and I want to resolve in this time of prayer to give you everything. And I want everything to mean everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And in order to give you everything, Jesus, I need your grace. And in the words of the prelate of Opus Dei, I want to ask you, Jesus, give me the light to see and the strength to love. The light to see what I have not given you or what I am not giving you, and the strength to love that actually leads me to give it to you. And in your words, Jesus, alone I can do nothing, but with you I can do everything because you strengthen me. So Lord, give me your grace to correspond fully like the widow, like the martyrs of Uganda. How awesome are the saints! Their example and their intercession just helps me to keep going. And most of all, I cannot help but think of my Blessed Mother Mary. She indeed is an icon of self-giving. Her fiat, let it be done to me according to thy word, is the epitome of self-giving. And so, Mother, help me correspond to God's grace and give myself completely, just like you did. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help to put them into practice. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.